Hello and welcome to Why Not Wednesday. I am so excited to have our rock star guest today, Veronica Kirin, Empire Builder Coaching. Veronica, I'm so glad you're here. Let me give you a proper introduction because this deserves a good introduction. So, Veronica Kirin is an anthropologist, an author, an award winning serial entrepreneur. She is the creator of the three pillars of business scaling, which I'm sure we're going to hear more about, and has been named a Forbes Next 1000 Business Leader. She's done two TEDx talks that feature her anthropological research on paradigm shifts, and her first book, Stories of Elders, won the 2020 National Indie Excellence Award for U.S. History, and she's a finalist for the 2020 International Book Awards for General History. I know that's a mouthful, but welcome, Veronica. We are so glad to have you. How are you?
Hi, I'm so pleased to be here and spend time with you. You're one of my favorite humans, and I love the Y Institute as well, as you know. So, I'm here for it. I can't wait to get into it. It's exciting. And yeah, I'm very well. It's winter time here in Berlin, but Berlin winters are a little bit different, kind of more like in London, what you would expect. Like maybe a little dusting of snow, but mostly just kind of like misty and gray. So I miss the sun, but otherwise I'm quite well. How are
Well,
you?
I am so great. I want to thank you because, as I look back on our interaction, so I posted about this. You and I met through our good friend JC, I did an interview talking about why, and I knew right away that I was going to hit it off with you. I didn't know what it was. And then when we took you, you did your why, we found out your why is to challenge the status quo. But then you and I did some work one on one, and we got to figure out your YOS, which is to challenge the status quo, make sense of the complex, and contribute to the success of others. We have the same three Y's in our YOS. And I realized that's why we were finishing each other's sentences, even in that first interview we did.
Yeah. Yeah. Just simpatico the whole way through for sure.
It was so cool. And I've done more work, obviously, since then, but I think it was January of 2021 when we did that. So now that and you've been at this now, I think you got certified in May. Now that you know your YOS, what's been the biggest impact that that's had on you to know that you're a challenger, somebody who likes to do things differently?
Well, I think it's just affirming. Like, I think that's like at least the very baseline value proposition. If you don't know what else to say about the Y Institute, at the very least, you have affirmation about who you are. And everything that you've suspected about yourself throughout your life suddenly kind of makes sense. So just it allows me to say like, yeah, I'm a Y of challenge, so of course this is what I want to do, and it's totally valid and okay for me to act this way or do this thing, even when other people are like, what are you doing? That's a crazy idea. And I'm like, heck yeah, it's a crazy idea. That's exactly where I want to be.
That's exactly why you're doing it, right? Because it's a crazy idea. It's different.
Can't help it.
Yeah. So, for those that don't know, let's go over that. So your YOS is challenge, make sense, contribute. So your why is to challenge the status quo. How you do that is by making sense of and solving complex and challenging problems. But ultimately, what you bring are ways to contribute and add value in order to make an impact in the lives of others. How has that changed your messaging now that you know that about yourself? And we talked about the why, but what about the total package?
Yeah, I think it's actually just amplified a lot of the messaging that I was doing. So, as a coach, especially for entrepreneurs, messaging is super important. So, I'd actually
Right.
honed and got really close to that. Like, I was already using impact in my messaging. I knew I wanted to work with impact driven entrepreneurs. I knew that I wanted to make an impact. That's why I did 2 years of disaster relief for the United States government. Like, I was already
Mhm.
kind of like living in that space.
Yeah.
I think the how of making sense actually really helped. I think that was the most helpful one because I knew about my impact desire and I knew I was feisty, but the helping to things make sense. I'd been told that I was good at explaining things, and I'll bet you've been
Right.
told that you're good at explaining things, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of like a hard superpower to really quantify. Like, oh, you're really good at explaining. It just feels kind of ethereal. And
Right.
when we draw it down to say, no, like I make sense of the complex. That's part of who I am. I think that's the one that had the most impact
Mhm.
on my work and kind of my confidence about what I had going on.
And what we have found, it's your how. So it's
Mhm.
how you challenge by making sense. It's you
Right.
solve problems to challenge, and then you solve problems in order to contribute. So we find that our
Right.
how applies to our why and our what. So
Mhm.
it's in
Yes.
everything that you do. And I love what you just said in terms of, yeah, you always knew you could explain things, but now you have language that really explains it at a much higher level so that you can add value, right? Hey,
Right.
you've got a problem, you've got something you can't figure out, it's complex and challenging. Give it to Veronica. Now, she's going to do it differently than you probably would want to, but she's going to help you make sense of it. And I love that. I looked at your website, and one of the things I loved is I saw where you talk about, I'm a serial entrepreneur, author, and anthropologist. I
Mhm.
dream big, thrive on out of the box thinking. Challenge. I truly believe change is possible as long as we figure out the how. Makes sense. And then you say, I
Mhm.
provide the guidance, structure, and expertise to scale your business into the diverse legacy you envision while freeing your time and energy to continue your work long term. So there's your contributor. All three are in there. I don't know if you did that on purpose or if that was already there, but it just really reaffirms what we know about you.
Yeah, I think probably, so I rewrote that copy in July. I did a whole website overhaul experience. And so you and I had met, as you said, in January. And
Yes,
actually, you and I had met what, days, weeks after I moved to Berlin from the United States?
that's right.
Something like
Yes.
that. Like, I was
Yes.
in a totally different space that, like, it wasn't even my own apartment. I didn't even have an apartment. I was, like, just squatting in an Airbnb.
That's right, you had
Um,
just gotten there.
yeah, and so yeah, and I did all of my YOS over the course of the 1st and 2nd quarter. So when I was redoing my website copy, probably that's like I didn't sit down and intentionally hammer it out
Right,
in that format, like, intentionally, but it's had an impact on me. So it's sitting around in my mind and making a difference in the way that I'm communicating. And now, so like your order is you like to make sense. No, you like to contribute. Your why is contribute,
correct.
but your how also make sense, or is your
No,
how
my how
challenge?
is challenge, my what is make sense. So
Interesting.
so what I do is I do things differently in order to contribute and in order to make sense, and then ultimately what I bring are
Mhm.
solutions that make sense. So ultimately what you bring are solutions that contribute, right? So they're in a different order, but I
Yeah,
mean, it's there because one of the
it's
things
so
we've
cool.
learned, and you probably know this as you're working with people, these are our beliefs and our motivations, right? If you
Mhm.
even you don't even if you never called it a why, how, and a what, you could say, look, I believe in challenging the status quo. I believe it's
Mhm.
important to make sense of things, and I believe in contributing to the success of others. So there's a
Right.
belief, and it's what motivates you. If you're in a
Yeah.
place where you're challenging, you're making
Mhm.
sense of things, and you're contributing, that's a great
I'm
place,
happy.
right?
Yeah, absolutely happy.
Yes. Watson says shared whys, FTW. What does that mean? We're gonna have to ask you that, Watson,
For
and
the
put that in
win.
for the win. That's right. Shared why. So,
Bella says it.
here, and let me
Yeah.
ask you this question, Veronica. Do you find that when you run into people that share 1, 2, or 3 of your top 3, that these conversations are much easier?
It's kismet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, hi, Watson. Watson
Yes.
and I are also besties now. Because again, just like you're talking about, like the clarity around your why, like your
Right.
entire YOS helps to root you in a very particular way. And
Mhm.
it gives you a lexicon in order to communicate about yourself with others. And so when I'm meeting fellow coaches through the Y Institute, we're able to just like cut straight through into the meaningful conversation because we already have the lexicon in order to explain who we are, and
Right.
we brought in we get the lexicon that the
Right.
other person is using. I don't have to hammer around the edges in order to get to the middle.
So you work with entrepreneurs and you often work with their entire teams. What impact have you seen when people on a team understand each other at their YOS level?
Oh my gosh, it really does make an impact. And so to clarify, I work with entrepreneurs in order to help them do in order to help them scale their businesses. And
Right.
oftentimes that involves teamwork and restructuring. I mean, I've had a couple of clients who just like totally dismantle their team and start over because they have to restructure and
Yeah.
create something that is much more sustainable, right? Like the whole
Right.
point is freedom. So, yeah, I have a client that I'm working with now who she has a couple trying team members, and she was telling me how much she works really hard to um improve. She just always wants to improve. And so she
Right.
gets an assignment in from one of her team members, and then she looks for ways to improve it.
Right.
Um and I'm hearing her say this, and I'm like, she's a better way. And then the way she's describing one of her teammates who is saying, like, well, I did all the steps. I'm like, he's a right way. That's why they're
Right.
having so much conflict, which is why I appreciate from you when we talk about like how do the different why, hows, and what's, like, how do those go together and how do they clash? I think
Right.
that's really important too. So knowing that and being able to kind of like diagnose, even if I don't say it out loud to a client, like if they haven't even been through the YOS yet,
Right.
I can, I feel like I better understand my clients and their teams, even if I've never met them, just based on what they're describing to me.
Right. And you start looking, you know what words you're looking for, right? And so you know what's
Mhm.
in their top three as you're listening to them.
Yeah.
So then when you bring the assessment in, it just really helps solidify that. And then what we
Yeah.
do is, I'm sure you're doing this, Veronica, is we just put a spreadsheet up with their why, how, and what for everybody on the team. And then everybody understands, hey, this is why Veronica's always saying, hey, can we make this fun? Hey, why do we have to do it that way? Right. So then they
Yeah.
understand you. And then the other thing that leaders like, and I'd love to hear from you, what's the biggest insight a leader has given you? Because for me, it's always, what can we do this with my team? What about you? What do leaders commonly, how do leaders commonly react?
To the YOS.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's again like peace of mind and clarity. I think like just like for myself, it helped to affirm and diagnose just the things that I already knew were happening in my life, but so now I
Right.
understand the behaviors better. And so when a client does the YOS with their team, which is something that I provide for a lot of my clients,
Yeah.
just complimentary because it's so powerful. They then will say, "Oh, like now I understand why it doesn't get through the first time. I have to always say it this way or always deliver the information in a
Hmm.
certain manner that feels maybe a little bit unique to them. Like it's not the way that they would talk, but like my teammate, all like they will not get it unless they see it in writing, or they will not get it
Right.
unless I use a schematic." And it's like, oh, this is why. Or like they have to see the big picture. Right. And so
Right.
I know like people who are tuning in are like, oh yeah, I've been through that. I've been through that. I have a team member
Yes.
who's really annoying like that. It's like
We saw
once you
and
know the
Anza
why.
Anza Anza said a little while ago, "I feel that. That's me," because I
Yeah.
think she's got right way in her top 3. So, well, let me ask you this. The name of the show is Why Not Wednesday. What's your biggest why not moment, professionally and personally? You can give us both of them.
Totally my book. I would just say my book.
Yeah.
So I this was like the moment in my life where everyone was like, okay, I know Veronica is really audacious and
Mhm.
very driven, but she's running a company right now and yet also wants to hit the road for 6 weeks to interview people about the high tech revolution, to write a book, and she's never written a book before that we know of. And we're going to do a Kickstarter to raise funding for it. And how is she going to balance all this? And how is it going to happen? And then, as I mentioned to you now, like I met my publishers in the same way I met you through my podcast, and just like all of these little pieces fell into place. And I could see the big picture. I knew that I was going to pull this off. I knew it had never been done before. I knew it was a never, first of its kind, never been done before study. I
Right.
knew that my chops as a businesswoman and as an anthropologist was going to make it happen. I knew I would make it happen. It wasn't a question in my mind. But to everyone else, I mean, who gets up one day and says, you know what, I really want to hear from our elders about technology, and then fundraises and hits the road and just goes and talks to them about it? No
I
one.
Yeah, and why would you not do that, right?
And why wouldn't I?
your life is probably, people that are listening that know the whys, they're like, well, her why is challenged. Her life is full of why not moments. What about moving to Berlin?
I
Was
know
that a big why not moment?
I picked that up just before you said it. Yeah, exactly. Like, why not? I had always known that I wanted to live abroad. And so I formed a company that was international long before I was international. Um, but yeah, it was like, well, the pandemic has shut down all of our connections here. Why not just leave? We already aren't seeing people. We already aren't participating in this society anymore. Everything's closed. So we figured it out and we did it. And yeah, it's been very fun.
And it sounds like you're having a great time. So one of the things you're famous for is you've created, well, first of all, you are an anthropologist, right? So you
Mhm.
know about people, you study people, and now you help people scale
Yeah.
their businesses. How do the two relate?
So closely. Well, and I just saw Gary's comment. Hi, Gary. And I said to Gary actually something along these lines that my challenge why comes through in my anthropology because anthropology as a discipline tends to want anthropology to be done academically.
Right,
Um, and there's some historical trauma to that. There's very good reasoning behind it.
right.
But if anyone goes rogue, as I have, and is doing anthropology outside of the academic realm, it's very frowned upon. And so to me, I'm like, well, I'm challenging the status quo. I think anthropology can be done anywhere and be done well anywhere and to be done healthfully. And so I'm going to do it and I'm going to prove it because why not? Um,
Right.
anthropology studies. So for people who aren't totally familiar, anthropology is basically the study of humanity. We're really interested in what makes humans humans, and so we're looking at four disciplines. We have cultural anthropology, which a lot of people will default to thinking that's what anthropology is, looking at
Right,
living cultures, preserving them, etc. We have archaeology, which is Indiana Jones
right,
to some extent. So ancient cultures. We
right,
have linguistics, and we look at how language and culture interact and form each other. And we have biological anthropology. So we're looking at our evolution. So what makes us humans, what made us humans thousands of years ago. So I'm a cultural anthropologist and I study paradigm shifts. Now, if you were to take the word culture or subculture and just swap it out with target markets,
mhm,
it's the same thing. It
right,
really is the same thing. So I have been trained to have a laser focus into how other people act and
right.
think and interact with products in their lives, with other people. And all I have to do is just swap that into business. And I'm able to see very clearly and very easily into what a target market might want and see those trends. It's really quite fun, but again, it's definitely challenging the status quo as to what an anthropologist is supposed to be doing.
I love that. Now you're working on something that's going to end soon, documenting the pandemic. It's your latest work called Stories of COVID, and you're
Yeah.
documenting the pandemic for future generations. Tell me what attracted you to that and how is that going?
Well, so I'm an anthropologist who studies paradigm shifts, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
Um, and so it's the beginning of March 2020, and all this stuff is happening to us,
right,
and it is on a large scale. So there's no way this isn't going to have a lasting impact on our cultures and societies globally, especially as we are an increasingly globalized society.
right.
Um, I also am somebody that has to take action in order to feel safe. I can't sit back and allow all the way to the point where if I have blood being drawn, I have to watch. I have to somehow like be a part of the experience. I can't like
Yes,
close my eyes. It's not good. Um, so those two things came together and I said, okay, we're about to enter a massive critical paradigm shift, huge historical event. And this isn't going to go away in 2 weeks. I mean, come on. I
right,
didn't think it would last this long, but I was aware that it was going to be longer than 2 weeks.
right.
Um, and I have to take action in order to feel safe. So I am going to do what I do best, and I'm going to put my ethnography hat back on, just like I did for my first book. Use the same methodology. It worked very well. I learned some lessons, so I just simply improved it. And on March 23rd, 2020, I had my first interview, and it's been off to the races ever since. And I've been talking to people all around the world about their experiences with the pandemic, for better or worse. I've heard incredible stories, stories of hope, studies of fear, stories of heartbreak, stories of adventure.
Yeah.
And as you said, I've got to wrap it up. There's no way a book is ever going to get written if I'm doing interviews ad nauseum. So I've
Right.
decided to end it at the 2-year mark. So on March 23rd, we'll do the last interview and I'll start writing.
I love that. So we just saw a comment from another person, Eileen McDard, who also has RYOS. She is Make Sense Challenge contribute. So we've got three
Mm.
different orders between the three of us. So thank you for the comment, Eileen. And she just absolutely, as Aiden says, as a marketing strategist, somebody who can do what you do
Mhm.
with archaeology and marketing together, it's really brilliant. Now, you do something really cool. You're an empire builder coach. Tell me what that is. Tell our audience what that is.
Yeah. So every so often I pause and think to myself, like, you're using a word, empire, which has sometimes, especially anthropologically, implied some like pretty intense experiences for humanity. But I mean empire in that you are building something big and something audacious, probably something challenging. Um, you want to make an impact on the world,
Right.
and you're doing it through business. I actually really believe that entrepreneurship is the path through freedom and to freedom in so many different ways. It's to financial freedom, freedom of location, freedom to choose who you want to and don't want to work with, freedom to
Right.
do what you love every day, or to do something you don't necessarily love so that you can do what you love as a hobby and never have to cross paths. Like, you get to choose. It's the freedom of choice and everything. Um, and so I help people to grow and scale into an empire. So to me,
Mhm.
an empire is more than one offering. So I have a podcast, I have a book, I have a study, I have a retreat, I have private coaching, I have products coming out this year. And
Yes.
so I have multiple income streams and rental property,
Mhm.
actually. So multiple
Yeah.
income streams. That's an empire. That's all an empire is. And that's what I want for anyone who thinks that they ever want to do it. I'm here for it. I will help you.
Fantastic. So without giving away all your secrets, you talk about the three pillars of business scaling, right? That's what the Empire Retreat is all about. So what can you tell us
Yeah.
about what are the three pillars?
Yeah. So the 3 pillars of business scaling, I created as I was a small business owner, languishing in the lack of knowledge and understanding of scaling for small businesses. So
Mhm.
what makes me the most mad is that the startup community gets eons of resources. They have
Right.
grants from the government, they have university grants, they have venture capitalists and accelerators and
Right.
incubators and like all of these programs, all of the support. But we keep saying how small businesses are, the backbone of the economy and employ more people around the world than any other type of business and da 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 da. Right. So like we just are always saying how much small businesses are so important, and yet
Right.
we really throw them under the bus as far as supporting them. And so
Mhm.
I worked really hard in my own business first, in my tech company, which I sold in 2018, to figure out scaling for small businesses, to
Mm.
steal the startup scaling tactics, and get myself to a healthy place. I was burnt out. I was working 70 hours a week when I started this. Um, so by the time I sold my company in 2018, after 2 years of scaling, I was working 10 hours a week. It was
Yes.
very nice. And so that's
Yeah.
where the 3 pillars come from. Just to be clear, I have them in a specific order because they work best in that order. But a lot of my clients come to me already down on the third pillar, and we need to backtrack a little bit. And sometimes you go back and forth. So I just want to caution everyone, this is not like set in stone. We move back and forth as needed because life is fluid, humans are fluid, businesses are fluid. So the first pillar of scaling is automation. And today we have like like, look at us. Look at
Yeah.
this. Look at this amazing thing we're doing using technology.
Right.
And so much of it was automated. The calendar, the invitations, the sign up. Like, I don't even think you had to talk to me, or you sent me a link and I signed myself up. So
Right.
that's automation. It saved you
Right.
so much time. It made sure we were all here. It was easy. We've got a great audience with us today. And automation is definitely a way that you can make money in your sleep through selling products online, for
Right.
getting signups, etc. So we love to automate. Let's use as many free tools first in order to save you time, so that
Right.
we have time to then take the next pillar, which is systems.
Mhm.
And they really go hand in hand. So if your systems and processes are solid, your automation will be solid, and vice versa. I want you to not have to think about what you're doing every day. I want you to be able to think about all the creative and fun stuff that you want to be doing. But if you're constantly
Mhm.
thinking about what's the next step that I want my client to go through, or what do I need to send next to this person, or how do I do this, even though you've done it several times before, like, I'm sure, Dan, that there are things that you've repeated on a daily basis that for some reason you never wrote down. And so you have to sit and think
Mhm.
for a second, okay, what do I do next?
Yeah.
Like,
So
hashtag relatable. I don't know. This is, even
and
still, I know this.
and I love hearing a challenge person talk about systems, because no matter what, systems are so important. So automation, systems, that probably you bring people around to help you with that. But what's the third one?
You just hit it. Hiring.
Yes.
So with automation, you have got technology doing things that humans don't really need to be doing.
Right.
With systems, again, you've offloaded so much of your brain space and your time, and you've made everything streamlined. And with good systems, you now can study your business, which is also part of the foundations of empire building. With
Excellent.
those things put together, you now can hire, and you're hiring people to do work where humans are really needed. So you're not paying
Mhm.
somebody to do something that a tech could do.
Right.
And you have incredible systems. So their training is easier. So you make a better hire so they can dive back in and have value and impact in the business
Right.
right away. They feel valued. You feel excited. Everybody feels good. As I said, that doesn't always they don't always go in that order. And sometimes I have people hire me when they're kind of panicked about their team, but that's okay. It's a lesson learned.
You know what's really cool is you did exactly what I was thinking what's going to happen. We finished a sentence. I actually finished a sentence before I asked the question. Isn't that cool? I talked about hiring right before I asked you about it.
You
So
did it. Yes.
that is amazing. I love
Winning.
that. So you're doing something really cool in May. So you have an Empire retreat coming up. I want to ask you, where is it? Tell me what's going to happen at it, and the location is amazing. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, Dan, I think I don't know if you know this, but my lineage is Croatian, and in
Yes.
September I became a Croatian citizen. So
Ah.
I'm now a dual citizen with the United States. And so I just can't help but tout the beauty and wonder and history of my country.
Mhm.
And most people don't realize that Croatia, yes, it's got beautiful beaches, but it looks over the sea directly at Italy. And it used to be part of the Roman Empire, at least the
Right.
coastal parts were. And so I'm inviting several entrepreneurs who want to learn my scaling methodology, but learn it fast in an intensive 5-day retreat where they get all the downloads into their brains, make the plan, totally revolutionize their business, and they go home and they just hit the ground running like they've never dreamed they could ever do before. Um, I've decided to invite them to Split, Croatia, which is on the coast in the southern area of Croatia. And Split is where Emperor Diocletian of the Roman Empire decided to build his retirement palace. And so we will be staying in the palace of a Roman emperor to build our
Wow.
empires, and it's going to be really, really fun. I've got a CEO photo shoot scheduled for all of them as well. So you're going home like feeling like an amazing empire builder, having lived in an emperor's palace, learning the skills of an empire builder. It's just going to be really great.
And you talk about, it's great because it all kind of comes together, because you talk about pillars and we're talking about an empire. So it all kind of goes
Mhm.
together. So Veronica, this has been so much fun. one last question for you. I love to ask this because I'm going to use it as a testimonial. If you knew someone who is thinking about doing the YOS certification and joining the Y Society, but they're just thinking about it, they're not quite there, what would you say to them?
First of all, I mean, we've already talked about how impactful and supportive knowing your discovery is. So I would just do it. Like get in, do your why discovery at the very least. I would say do the whole YOS. Like get your whole system figured out. Even if you just to take it away and know what you're about.
Yeah.
It really does help, and it's I tell people this, and this is off script, like, Dan never told me to say this, Gary never told me to say this, but it is the only personality test that I've come across that tells you your why. Everyone else is saying, "This is how you operate, this is what you're good at." This is the one that tells you your why. Um, if you're thinking about becoming a Y certified coach, I mean, do it. You know, like we're an amazing community, obviously.
Obviously.
Dan's involved. So you know it's good. Um, but it's such a wonderful value add to at least to my business. Like I think it's just such a beautiful value add. It really gives you the chance to be so much more supportive to your clients
Yeah.
and like really take care of them. And I think most people here watching today are the type of people who really want to take care of their
Yeah.
clients. Yeah.
Love that. Thank you so much, Veronica. It's been a blast.
Yeah.
We're right on time. So we're going to end the
Woohoo!
show and say goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.